Presidential historian and CBS News consultant Douglas Brinkley is joining us now. Good morning to you, Douglas Brinkley. Good to see you.
Good morning, Gail.
Why do you suppose that Ethel Kennedy wants to keep the documents so secret right now, and what do you think that we could learn from them?
Well, we have to get back to 1968 when her husband was slain in Los Angeles, and how horrific that was for a mother with all those kids. And a deal was made with the National Archives that she would get control over what's called the RFK personal papers, and she's had control over these all these years. Now, one could complain about the bargain between Ethel Kennedy and the National Archives, but Mrs. Kennedy is not doing anything wrong. They're really her papers at this point. What the problem is that we're finding out they're not really just personal papers and correspondence, that there's material, as you mentioned, about the Cuban Missile Crisis and other events when RFK was Attorney General. But I don't see this as a big kind of issue. I think eventually they'll all be open. They're all saved at the Kennedy Library in Boston, so it's simply a matter of when. With the 50th anniversary of the missile crisis approaching, a lot of scholars would like to get into it now. I'm afraid it'll be still a few more years before they're open.
I understand some of the documents are marked classified and some are marked confidential. What's the difference between the two types of designations?
Well, I mean, the ones that are truly personal papers, let's say, might be a letter to Frank Sinatra or RFK's correspondence to Jackie Kennedy. Those would be of great interest to us as Americans, but it's nothing to do with national security. Other ones, like during the missile crisis, you might be dealing with, some things might even have to be redacted. You might be dealing with the CIA operative or a very top secret military classified bit of knowledge that could have ramifications for our foreign policy today. So this batch of Kennedy papers needs to be scrutinized, and there's also a monetary value that would need to be put on them. But the good news is the Kennedy family says they're going to be open. It's just going to be a matter of timing, and Ethel Kennedy has the law in her favor because she brokered a deal that was in her favor back in '68.
Hey, Doug, it's Jeff. Always good to see you, sir. I wanted to ask you about what's happening at the compound as well. What do you make of all that?
Well, again, the good news, the headline could be that the house is saved, and it is a historic house indeed. Very few places have captured our imagination like Hyannis Port during the Kennedy years. Since the death of Ted Kennedy, the house, what does one do with a very expensive and also wonderful summer vacation spot? Do you hold it as an institute place for people, for the Ted Kennedy Institute, or is it as a place that the Kennedy family should continue to use? So you're dealing with, I think, an inner Kennedy family squabble. When Ted Kennedy was alive, this wasn't an issue, but his death, as in all deaths, sometimes bring in different estate battles, and the Kennedys are no different than anybody else.
Yeah, Ted Kennedy certainly became the patriarch of the Kennedy family with all the kids and all the cousins. Who do you see, Doug, as the leader of the Kennedy family now?
I don't think there is no more. Their void was left by Ted Kennedy. I mean, when he would show up at Hyannis Port or in Washington, all of the rest of the Kennedy family would kind of galvanize around him, and he would tell them what was going on in Washington or the inside scoop on things. That doesn't exist anymore, and it's a lot of just different people trying to make it through life. It's just remarkable to me how Bobby Kennedy's kids keep making public policy influences. I mean, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as an environmentalist, and Kerry Kennedy in human rights, or Rory Kennedy making documentary films. They're always kind of in the limelight, but doing very important public service work. So the Kennedy name is still very popular. And remember, 1 out of every 4 Americans is Catholic, and this was the Catholic American president, JFK. And Catholics all over the world look up to the Kennedys. They like the lore. If you're a Kennedy and you go to Italy or you go to Argentina, you're treated as royalty. And in the United States, we're endlessly fascinated by the family.
All right, Douglas Brinkley reporting live this morning. We thank you. Americans love visiting.